guys, Chris Deliane for Hobby Game Dev, and today we're talking about something of importance to everyone in the world. I know it's a big claim, but hear me out because this is about time management. And while I normally try to dedicate the blog to talking about issues only relating to game developers, the reality is time management clearly affects all of us too. We have a very time-consuming craft and hobby and calling, and if we can't put the time into things, we're not going to get the results we want. We're not going to make things that we're proud of. When I've been trying to use my Twitter account more recently, more actively, at Hobby Game Dev, and I'll ask people, what challenges are you facing? What are you working on? What are your biggest issues? Again and again, time comes up as the problem. And or, if it's not time, it's something which kind of could be fixed with more time, right? It's like, I'm not good at art. Well, more time would allow you to improve that. I don't yet know how to program in a language I need. Again, time would help you fix that. Even if it's personal issues on the team, we're having arguments on the team, time will help you sort that out without the pressure of, we've got to be doing this or that. So time is essential. And so I've got a few tips from my own experiences making games and watching others in VGDev and Game Creation Society and my fellow independent developers who are still full-time out in San Francisco about time management strategies. But this isn't the usual kind of time management because I'm going to begin by saying that calling it time management is part of the problem. All right? And that's because it misassigns the nature of the problem to blame time, when time is really the symptom. Okay? Most of us have enough time. And I mean this as kindly as possible. I don't know you. I don't know your situation. But I can say that most people that I run into who blame time really have enough time in the day. There's some other challenge, some other issue that they're blaming on time. But, so for example, have you ever had this come up where you unexpectedly had a lot more time than you normally do? Maybe if you're still in school, you got an assignment that took a lot less time than usual, but you still find yourself using the time unproductively. Maybe if you're in the work life and you often have overtime and suddenly you've got a few days in a row sort of rest, you find you're not just using the time in a way that you feel good about after the fact. And so that's your clue that there's some other issue besides time. See, I think it's more useful to think of it as energy management or motivation management or even distraction management rather than time management, because time, again, is the symptom. It's what happens from us failing to manage our energy, our motivation, or our distractions. So one strategy, just concrete, to start out with a method that works for me, works for a lot of my friends, doesn't work for everyone. It can be dangerous in the wrong hands. So I offer you this with, I'm trusting you as an adult to use your discretion on whether or not this is going to work for you. If you're the kind of person with the determination, the self-discipline, the willpower that you will do the work you have to do, right? So if it's assigned to you from the outside world, you'll get it done, and you won't let yourself go to sleep or move on or do anything else until it's done. Then sometimes the way that kind of person can fit in their own hobbies, their own work, their own craft, is to pack it in for an hour or two before you do the work that you have to. Now, that sounds crazy, right? Because the dessert should come after the meal. You want to reward yourself by, I'm going to do the stuff I have to do so I can then do the stuff I want to do. But the reality is, if you're the kind of person who's going to get it done anyway, the work that has to be done, then the only way you're going to do the work you don't have to do is if you prioritize it, put it in front. Now, give yourself a time limit, like I say, an hour or two. Give yourself a cap on it and say, I'm going to work on my stuff until 6:30. Then I'm going to shift gears to what I got to be doing. And what you might find, at least I found in my own energy management, is that I can then carry that momentum from remembering what I love about the work that I do, about my own projects, my own craft. I can carry that energy, that passion, that sense of learning from puzzle solving, from doing work that needs to get done, that bigger picture, into being more productive in my outside work. Does that make sense? Because you want to look back and feel good about what you're working on, and I find that the thing that's draining isn't even really doing work, it's doing work for somebody else. It's doing work on someone else's terms. It's doing work someone else is going to decide whether or not we keep it. It's doing work where someone else decides the boundaries on what I can and can't do. Doing work that I decide the boundaries and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and what time frame I'm working on, that gives me energy to then bring to these other things. When I was touring schools, this would have now been about a decade ago, considering undergraduate schools to go to, my father and I visited Harvard University, where I got this little tidbit during the tour, accidentally. It wasn't even a part of the tour. One of the tour guides was a varsity athlete at Harvard University. It turns out, so despite being a good academic school, they also have a huge club sports program in terms of the numbers, but they told me that the athletes at Harvard often get better grades in season than out of season. Now think about that, right? Because if time was the issue, in season their grades would just fall apart, and out of season their grades might shine. But what happens is they get that passion, that drive, that outlet, that thing that they're good at, that they love doing, and then that helps give the momentum, the energy, and the structure around which the rest of their work can succeed, and they can excel in their academics as well as their schoolwork. And that's part of the idea, too, of I've found a lot of my outside projects, the learning I've had to do for my games, then helps me out with the kind of projects I'm doing for school or for work, in a way that I can be more efficient with it and feel better about it and not be struggling on someone else's dime or time, because I've already taught myself those issues because I cared to make my project excel, to make work I was proud of and felt good about. The one of the issues too is that we have to admit sometimes that time isn't the issue. I know I began with this by saying that we need to frame it as energy management or something else, but if the problem's not time and you're trying to treat it like time, you're treating the symptom. And if you're pumping in medicine for something that's the wrong illness, you're not treating the real thing at hand. And so one of the things that happens is we distract ourselves with personal issues where we're tied up in knots over something we wish we would say to somebody, or something we have to get off our chest. We're not happy with something in our life that we simply have to get in order. And this is going to sound an easy thing to say, right? Like any coach could just tell you, you got to get your life in order. But the fact of the matter is, if you're too worn down and torn up and depressed from something else in your life, you might have to, especially if it's because there's something in your power that you could be doing more about that and you're not, you kind of got to do that. You kind of got to fix those issues up so you can not be so distracted from your own work by acknowledging you've got these other things in your life you can put in order, you can fix, you can improve, you got to take action on to unlock yourself, to be able to focus on your work and not be distracted by these things that you need to make that call. You need to tell the truth to somebody about something. Just get it out of the way so you can get back to focusing on the things that you care about in your own time, your own interest, and so on. Now, I say your own time. One of the challenges people run into is loneliness, and I've been there. I've been making this stuff now for 10, 15 years, and a lot of that seems like alone time. Even if I'm on a team sometimes, especially in academic or collaborative extracurricular club teams, a lot of time is spent working alone, where we'll collaborate, sending files across by email and whatnot. But the thing to remember is that in a way you're socializing, right? So if you're in a chat context and you're thinking of what message you want to send back to somebody, that's a social activity, right? It's a social action. If you're typing an email to a friend, if you're sending a message to a family member and you're having to think about what you want to tell them, that's a social activity. It's not immediate, but it's a social activity. Now, when you're making a game, as long as you have the confidence and the determination that you're going to release something to the outside world that you can show your friends and family, as well as some strangers, then in a way, you're communicating with them. You're socializing with the outside world. You're taking part in a discussion about game design through the act of making this artifact, right? Because what you're making is saying something about yourself and may even lead the player to think new things about their own selves. And so you got to think of it as fitting within that context, right? Because we often get caught up in these distractions that we'll keep refreshing Twitter and Facebook and Gmail, and I'm as much a victim of this as anybody else. But the way I've sort of made that shift is, because I want those people in my life. I want to keep in touch with those people. Is when I'm working on things, I'm thinking about those people. Because I'm thinking about how this thing I'm working on is something I can show them to get their feedback on, their thoughts on. And I value their opinions and their feedback and their thoughts. And it's something I can bring back to those platforms and say, hey, look at this neat thing I did. And of course, moreover, the more you've been doing this, the more you're going to find opportunities to work with other people who have also decided to commit their time and energy to making games and learning skills related to games. And you can feel good about the skills you can bring to that collaboration because there's things you're going to have practice at that they don't and vice versa. And then that's more socializing through making games. So many of my friends now in graduate school, and as well as, frankly, when I was an undergrad, came from making games with people. There's a degree to which I feel like I best know someone when I've made something with them. That's a technique I kind of learned from John Nesky, one of my former collaborators. He gave that talk from Journey the other day on VGDev. So you gotta, lastly, just get started. You just gotta kind of go for it. And if it sounds like you're sitting in front of the keyboard and not making progress, go for a walk. I don't like going outside, I'll be honest. But I do, because I acknowledge I'm a creature as much as I need food, as much as I need a little bit of fresh air. There are these things we need in our lives that if we don't get them, we're going to bind up and not be productive and something's going to feel wrong. So maybe go for a half-hour walk. Don't think of it in terms of every single moment has to be maximum productivity. Think of it as within this evening, I've got to be productive and I'm going to get more done in the next 3 hours if I take half an hour now to just go outside, breathe some fresh air, walk around the block. Think of it in terms of throughout this week, how can I manage that time and energy effectively to look back on it and feel good about what I did? And sometimes that means maybe taking a day off if it's in a way that complements your productivity on the other days. Remember, this is your own work, your own schedule, your own time. That's part of the beauty of it. But you do want to set those deadlines. And they can be fallback. They can be soft. They can be a plan for, okay, well, I'm going to have such and such done by Thursday. And if I can't figure it out by Thursday, I'm going to find a way to work around it so it doesn't hold me up. Because you want to keep making progress on these things up to the point of release. Because until it's released, like I always say, it's not a video game. But make yourself start. Whatever your excuse might be, find a way to identify it. It probably isn't time, even if you're blaming time. I hope you've been hearing me out here on finding ways to manage your energy and your distractions and your passion, because I think those are more often than not the limiting factors. Thanks for tuning in. This is Chris Delian for Hobby Game Dev. If you've got your own strategies for time management, energy management, distraction management, feel free to comment below, and I'd appreciate that so I can help account for that when I'll work with more peers in the future about trying to make more games. Thanks for tuning in.